Hello, hello everyone. Hi, come on in. Come on in. I'm so excited to see you guys today and spend some time with you. The last time I was live, I was in St. Thomas. It was for my birthday trip, and I introduced you guys to our next healing cohort that we're going to begin, and it's called Manifesting Money with God. And so we are going to go ahead today and have a beautiful, beautiful, and very juicy training on this topic. I'm so excited about just really inviting you guys into a container, a healing container around money and also around how to literally like attract and bring in money to you the feminine way. That is what I'm calling it. There's something about us as women uniquely who, as you keep growing, you just literally don't want to keep hustling for your money. And I know for me, this has been like a really, really big part of my current journey and my current season with money. When you come in, say hello, you guys. Tell me where you're watching from, and also what is it that you just kind of hope to learn with today's live. So as you come on in, answer that question for me. And so, what I love about today's training and also what we're going to be doing as we move deeper into this healing community. Hey, Pearl. Yes, yes, ready. Thanks for showing up. Notes, girl. Yes, I'm ready too. Look, I got my notes. I love y'all. I love our community because we are about the inner work. What's so great about today's lesson is this is going to be a kickoff lesson that will remain on YouTube, and this is just that invitation of the frontline work, on in the Manifest with God course container. We're going to go deeper into this work, and we're going to go deeper into healing the wounds that many of us as women have when it comes to making money the easy way. And so just a little bit about my story and why I think God like downloaded this particular course to me, why he gave it to me to teach, is because I am the girl who had to overcome so many money wounds, right? I literally, when I look back at the types of wounds that occurred in my life around money, I mean, it's almost like the term poverty is an understatement. When I look back at why it was so hard for me to like overcome those um just hurdles that I kept running into with money, it is because I grew up just with so many wounds. And so we're going to start today by kind of delving into that topic for you guys too, because I had five like primary wounds that kept me like, it kept my faith down from believing that God could do miraculous works with money and me. Right. And so, you guys, when you're doing your inner work, you may come across some other wounds. But my very first wound, WOUND, when it came to money, is I had a racial wound. Right. So, I remember, actually, let's start with the religious wound before we go to the racial wound, because I think that one would kind of give context to the race wound. So I grew up as that traditional church girl from the deep South, from South Carolina, going to church 2, 3 times a week. And while I literally felt like I connected to God the most through, my Christian church and that background, I remember being a little girl and hearing all of these like really negative comments about God and money. God and money, right? For whatever reason, all those verses about the love of God, the love of money is the root of all evil. There was always this like major warning coming out of the church from my vantage point as a little girl. And what that did to me is that made me almost think that money was over here and God was over here, right? Like they are enemies. I know we would put the term the love of money in there because rightfully so, we have to use money, right? Every day in our lives. So, how is it that money is evil? But no one ever stopped to distinguish, well, what's the difference between the love of money, me knowing I love money, versus me just having money and spending it. And so somehow, because nobody ever like sat down and really taught me uniquely what those differences were, I subconsciously started to like put God over here and put money over here. So my money life was separate from God for so long. Although my relationship with God was an important part of my life, I never ever I it took years. I won't say never ever. I'm teaching, but it took years for me to connect the dots that God and money are not enemies. As a matter of fact, what I have learned on this side of manifesting money with God, when I started bridging and healing that wound, right? Like work wasn't just about let me get up and do something for my physical body or so that I could physically eat. I started basically incorporating my positive relationship with God along with my positive like relationship with money. I started to connect them together, and I will talk more about how I did that. But one of the biggest wounds that I had to face before I started healing that relationship between God and money was I had to face um what it was that my religious system had taught me, right? And so one of the things for me, it was that emotionally that system had put a lot of fear in my heart around money. So when I would do things, in my business or even when I was younger and I would go for jobs, it was almost like I just accepted what everyone gave to me, right? It was like if somebody said that the job only paid $12 an hour, I was like, oh, okay, great, thank you. But what was behind that for me was this whole issue of like, I don't want to love money too much because if I love money, I'll then be an evil person. And if you are following me and whenever you guys are watching this material, I know that I attract really good-hearted women. I attract women who like literally have the kindest and most loving hearts because that's who I am. We were very, we're naturally very put off by something that says we're going to be evil, right? We don't want that type of just dark energy around us, right? We want to be happy and joyful and loving. And so it when the church would say this, when my religious system would continuously hammer that thought about money and God more than what I came to realize when I began to investigate God's word for myself, which was that this is not the only thing that God says about wealth. God does not have a warning about wealth energy only when it comes to money. As a matter of fact, one of the first places I started healing my relationship with money is by tabling all of the things, all of those verses that had been kind of pushed in my subconscious mind that made me fear money. So if I'm afraid of money, I'm definitely not asking God to bring it into my life the easiest way possible, right? I'm afraid of it. So when I first started my healing journey and manifesting money with God, it was going and putting as many positive verses about wealth that the word of God said. I had to do that work first to just open up my heart and open up my mind to the concept that God and money are not against each other, right? God and money are not against each other. And so if this kind of resonates with you, just let me know in the chat or your thoughts. And so I just kind of like that was the biggest kind of hurdle for me. And even now that I'm in my queen journey around money, right? I'm in my journey around money where every day I'm talking about millions. I'm negotiating deals that are in the seven-figure level. Right now, I have several real estate deals that I'm analyzing for my own portfolio. Probably how many doors? I want to say it's 34. One deal is 34 doors. Another deal is 10 doors, and I think the last deal is like 6, so almost adding like 50 doors to my real estate portfolio. Um, those deals are on my table now. I'm analyzing wealth at these large numbers and in these like massive ways for my own life, not only my life, but you guys know I'm a lawyer, so for my client's life as well. When I started creating a positive association with God and my money, it was as though the opportunity started to open up for me in a different way. And so, what was one of the main questions and one of the main things that I journaled during this time for those of you who won't be joining us in the course? One of the main things that I did in order to began shifting my mind was I began to associate, or I began to incorporate the positive verses in the word of God around money, right? So that God, anything around God being the creator of wealth, anything about around God being the one that causes us to prosper, anything around God and money being talked about in a positive way. In Proverbs, there's this verse that says, both God and money are a defense. I would sit and I would like meditate on those verses over and over. And one of the questions I asked myself during this time, and this is a great journaling prompt for those of you who are also on your journey of healing your money wounds, and especially if you have a deep religious wound around money, the question that I would ask myself is, where in my life do I have positive, high vibrational conversations around money? Right? When I was like really getting into my rich girl journey, right, which is the kind of the stage that I'm in now, I'm about to move into my Miss Multimillionaires journey. That's what I'm calling it, Miss Multimillionaires. But I'm leaving the part of my life where I started my rich girl era, right? Just taking trips whenever I wanted, traveling the world, got money in your bank account, money coming in from multiple places, you know, that first manifestation of riches and wealth. I'm moving deeper into this stage because it only gets better and better, right? So I'm moving deeper into the stage, but I'm leaving that first like rich girl era where you're not anywhere near poverty, you're not anywhere really even near middle class. You are kind of at the top of our society when it comes to wealth. And that was one of the first questions that I asked myself when I was ready to transition out of that mentality and that energy of just having enough money. That mentality and energy, of course, when it's like I don't have enough money, right? That's the more deep poverty wound. During the deep poverty wound, that's when I was reading a lot of books. I was really, really starting to understand how money and wealth worked. That next stage when income started coming in through my career or through certain jobs, I was applying what I learned from the books, and then of course going into this rich girl journey. This is the transition. I'm giving you guys the transition period because I know there are so many of you that are just tired of struggling with a negative connotation around wealth. We need money and you want that. So I journal with myself, where in my life do I have easy conversations around money? And what I learned in journaling that question was that, honest to God, before I entered into my rich girl season, when I was still in my like middle class poverty girl season, definitely when I was in my slave girl era, y'all know about my slave girl area. She tries to rear her head even now, like the overworking girl who just doesn't want anything, right? She has no ability to receive. She's just, her head is down and she's just working. All of those seasons and all of those parts of my personality I touched. And at the end of the day, to move to the rich girl season, I was like, oh, I'm not having real conversations about money and wealth anywhere in my life, right? The people who were connected to my personal life outside of, a few relationships we could breach or kind of talk about money, but it would be surface level. And if we did talk about money, it was always somebody complaining about money. And so what I recognized was that, well, Lindasha, if you want to invite, riches and wealth into your life, and if you know that God and money are not only are they not enemies, God and money are actually friends, that you are able to do way more good in the world when you have a better relationship with money than being the girl who is overworked, overgiving, and broke, right? You can't do a lot of good in the world that is a physical world that requires physical things when you don't have the financial resources to do it. So when I started to sense that, wait a minute, I'm even in the church, and how, although I have a church that talks about having great stewardship around money, there was this real disconnect between how do you receive it at higher levels and how do you get it. And I really feel like that gap was bridged for me when I began to search out for intelligent communities that were having high vibrational conversations around money. I actually found those communities more online, and then it has translated into me finding, the individuals, because now I know how they think and I know where we show up. I have a community in my life where we're pretty much all rich, or everybody's not at the same level of money, but we all have a certain level of wealth. We're not afraid to talk about money or whatever else. But for me, it manifested by first starting with an online community. So that was my first wound that made manifesting money with God extremely difficult, right? And I had to, on my money journey, heal all of the things that came up. So for some of you guys, it is about what story um, you learned through whichever environment that caused the most wound to you. It's about overcoming the stories and the patterns and the sayings and the thoughts that were always put onto you around money, even though at the end of the day, we all still have to use money and we all still want it, right? The second wound that I had, outside of the religious wound, is I had a cultural wound. With this cultural one, I also call it the racial wound, because I was going to separate those. I think there's a place that you can separate them, but for right now, I'm going to talk about these two areas together. And so, culturally and racially was my second, like, boom, whammy. Like, it was like, if God wanted to make money easy in my life, He had to first go through all of this foolishness that my environment had taught me. And if anything is speaking to you, or you're having any aha moments, let me know in the chat, um, and we'll make this interactive. But the second wound I had was that cultural wound, right? And so the cultural racial wound was around the girl who was the descendant of enslaved Africans, right? And we know that in our history in America, that we were forced to give our labor without being compensated for it, right? Generation after generation after generation. And so that wound of seeing Black people work hard, but then only receive pennies, it literally was poured onto me as a girl from the deep South. And so I had to, if the church and the religious wound put fear as a main emotion around money that kept me from understanding what God's intent and original design was for me around wealth and prosperity. The second place God had to overcome was my cultural wound. Because I don't know about you guys, but for me, you'll be sitting at the family barbecue, and um this happened. Actually, I was at one of my friends' houses, and we at her family barbecue, and they start arguing about $5, right? Some about gas money, and an argument broke out about $5, right? And so at the time, I had kind of gone, I was accumulating a good amount of money at the time, and I couldn't believe that people were still arguing about $5. But for many of us in our community, that is a reality. If you are the person that built wealth or has a desire to build wealth, you have a desire to evolve into the most wealthiest and richest version of yourself, which nothing is wrong with that. I know that God blesses that version of you, because He's blessed that version of me, and it's getting better and better, right? So to be a little girl and experience people, and even as a grown woman, fighting over $5 and $10, it literally translates into you that your value and your worth is very low, right? Because $5 or $10 should not be the thing that causes people to start fighting, right? It's such a small thing. It's like no one has $5 to spare, right? We have to, like, break up our relationships with our family members over $5, $10 over some gas, a gas tank. And in my mind, I was like, well, who needs the gas here, right? And that example is literally a sign of what God does when the people who love Him have money. It's like What in the world are y'all fighting over? If you just need some gas, here go the gas money, right? And of course, for me, one of the things that I don't do is I don't give when I'm not led to give. I only give when God has put it on my spirit. But that is one of the things that you're just like, absolutely not. We're not gonna like create family wounds over $5. And so, that just is an example of the various things that culturally I was taught that the value of my work is so low. But in reality, when I started digging into this wound deeper, and the thing that I am going to, the exercises and the things that we're going to do around money and manifest with God, is I started to see no, our culture actually helped build the greatest nation in the world. Our work was very valuable. It is just we didn't receive the rewards for it. And the more and more I started to like energetically, like I imagine myself being one of my like descendants in one of my exercises. And I imagine her receiving what she was supposed to receive for the work that she did. I imagine my great grandfather receiving what he was supposed to receive, being a sharecropper for as long as he was on cotton fields back in the day, right? He was supposed to technically own those fields. And so the more I started allowing myself to receive all that they were not able to receive because of the threats of death and all of the things we know we went through, that led me to have a deep wound of death, right? So if you are coming from my background and you're like, Dot, I want to believe what you're saying, but it's so hard. The reason I know kind of what comes up inside of you if somebody says, hey, God is able to give you money easy, is because I had to go back and face some of that energy of like what it would mean for me to die if I were rich, right? It's almost like you carry that ancestral wound with you as you're moving forward in your own life, and it just keeps us stuck generation after generation. And so this healing container is going to help those of you. And it doesn't matter, African Americans are not the only ones that have a cultural wound. If you're a Latino American, I know you have a maybe even a deeper wound. There are still very, very deep wounds in the Latino community around wealth that we as African Americans have been able to break because our ancestors helped build. Like I said, we got something to stand on. We like, no, we helped build these bridges and tunnels and grow the rice and the cotton. And no, we are owed something, right? So you have a certain level of um justice when it comes to now healing your money wounds and not being afraid to ask for more money at your job, or if your job is not willing to do it, opening yourself to other opportunities, all of the things that you will navigate as you are becoming and having a more juicy and delicious relationship with money. I personally love being able to think about money in such a positive light at this stage in my life, because it just feels better, right? I use money all the time, and now I have such a high vibration around what I do with money. Everything that I spend my money on now is it literally makes me excited and happy. I almost don't have anything, and if there is something that I'm spending money on that is not happy, I always course correct that on my money dates, which we'll talk about in the course. What does it look like to have a money date and actively repair your relationship there? So the third wound that I wanted to talk to you guys about that kept me from manifesting money with God, because God is like, here, I got all these blessings. You may see other people being blessed and all of that. And I'm not talking about the blessings that come with a curse on the back end, right? You got your brand new car, but then it got repossessed. No, I'm talking about the blessings that come from God and it's like solid. And you're just blessed and blessed and blessed again. I hear you. My cousins complain about little amounts. It's so uncomfortable talking to them on a call. Yes, right? I remember that stage where I was just like, "Oh my god, like what is going on?" And now from the place where I am now, I do have more compassion, right? But I also understand that it's their choices that they kind of want to live that life, right? Because everybody isn't into this personal development and healing work. They kind of want to live that life, and I have compassion for them. But for me, I recognize that I would rather be the girl that is able to like jump on a flight when she wants to, purchase whatever dress she wants to, have fun with my money, go see my friends when I want to, as opposed to using my energy to argue about $5, right? So while I have compassion on you, I had to make sure, I'm using my energy to manifest the things that God has placed on the inside of my heart. And healing my relationship with money was the way that it was going to happen versus staying stuck arguing. It's so uncomfortable. And even now, one of my friends, she's like super 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 rich, right? She's like that super wealthy rich, and she laughs because her family still deals with it too, right? It's a universal thing for those of us who are on this journey of building more wealth and increasing our capacity to receive money. And so I laugh at her because she was like, her family now knows, like, don't bring that to her. We were talking about it. Actually, she was one of the ladies that went with me in St. Thomas, and she was like, her family just knows, do not bring that to her because she's just gonna stare at you. She's gonna look at you, and she's gonna like be like, "We are not peasants. We don't argue about $5. We don't argue about $10, right?" And she is setting that standard for her family, and she has broken so many generational curses of poverty in her culture too, because she is from the Middle East, and so her family is like one of the only families that made it to America, and so they were sending money back, so she had some deep poverty wounds that she had to overcome too. That's why I said racially, it could be not just African Americans, but many of us have these wounds. So I always kind of channel her when I am like at a family member, like one of the kids' games, or all the times that you're with your family members and money comes up, or it's time to pay the bill at dinner or something, and folks getting awkward or they're fussing at their kids. Don't you order all this? I'm not paying for that. Right. I kind of just hold the pose of, we don't do that here. Right. And it doesn't mean that I force my opinion or anything on them. They have to, but I'm giving the children in my family the opportunity to see what wealth looks like, versus what money looks like when you're not in survival mode, right? And again, there's no judgment of the friends or family that doesn't want to do their money work, but I just know that I wanted to have an example growing up, and I didn't. Like I told you, I had to find my community of high vibrational people who could talk about wealth online first, in general. And now I have manifested a physical community where I can do that. So that cultural and racial wound for me was one that went as deep as like feeling like I was going to die, right? And isn't that like weird? My friends and I talk about this, my rich friends and I talk about this now, because many of us have this same experience. It was like, why in the world do I feel like if I gotta receive $10,000, $20,000? I had one of the biggest paydays from a real estate investment that happened this week, right? The month of my 36th birthday. I have not announced how much it is except for to one group of friends where we deal with numbers on that level. I just don't like to like sticker shock people. This is public, all that kind of stuff. But this week, like one of our investments went to the highest, it's the highest payday like I've had my whole life, right? And so the check will be here in a few days, and all of that kind of stuff are deposited in a few days. And it's just one of those things where I'm like, wow, this stuff really works. And, when you are at that stage and you're able to receive, five figures in a day, six figures in a day, multiple six figures in a day, seven figures in a month, these astronomical numbers, you're kind of like, what in the world? Like, but your journey starts as, a lot of times from that bigger or enslaved position. So that is the second cultural wound that I know we will deal with intimately in the Manifest with God course. That course, just as a plug, congratulations on your big check. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I am so excited because it is like now I'm trying to make it my new normal. And I'm in the process right now of rearranging my day and my time around building the wealth at that level. So basically rinsing and repeating and recreating what we did to get this check. It's now going to be one of my like main things that I do. And so that's another kind of tip. when you're on your high earning journey, when you are on your like rich girl journey, you take resources away from maybe other things that you have been doing that don't produce at that level. And when God allows something to come into your life at these next level wealth, you take your energy and you put behind it and you recreate that over and over. And that's how you stabilize the energy. So we'll get into what that looks like. The course is a whole year. You guys will be with me in the Manifest with Money for a whole year. It is the first time I'm offering anything like this. I have not done any course where I have made myself available for a year. So this is going to be a testament to me as a life coach and as a money coach and as a relationship coach to you. But I just feel like there are so many women that are tired of the sample and you want to have access to your coaches for longer periods of time so that we can really see those shifts. So in my rich girl energy and moving from rich girl to Miss Multimillionaires is what I'm calling my next level, which that's a plug for Paris. That will be the topic for our Valentine's Day intensive in Paris next year. Is going to be Miss Millionaires. And so I'm going to be communicating about how I went from just my rich girl era where I learned how to shower myself with luxury and bags, and I built my jewelry collection and I built my bag collection and my shoe collection and my dress collection. And I just welcome riches into my life. I learned how to go to luxury spas and become comfortable around wealth. Was that era? Well, I'm leaving that era and now just producing at astronomical levels, right? And that will be Miss Millionaires in Paris. And so the links will be under this video. And it's also, I know Manifest with God is up on my website. I don't know if my team has put up the Miss Millionaires Paris intensive, but watch my social media. You guys will get the access to that. But we're definitely going February 14th is the day of intensive. And so we're going to be talking about bridging the role of real love and inviting your money into that, right? So that's part of healing this religion. It's not that you love money, you don't love money, you invite money into your love, right? That is how God designed money to work and do his work because he is love, and you have to invite money into your love, into God's love, so that God can tell you, okay, it's time for you to do this, it's time for you to do that. You guys know I'm manifesting a mansion, I'm manifesting the millions for the mansion, and God has shown me with the check I got this week, you are well in line. And so a few calls that I have today and the next few days to build a new financial team around this next level of wealth is coming. It's also new. So either way, I probably should have been teaching it more as I've gone on the journey, but it's still close enough whereby I remember a lot of the stuff that we've done. And so then the third wound that I wanted to talk about on this live, so I don't keep you guys too long. Hopefully, we may have about 15 more minutes. But it is the gender wound. Gender wound. Oh my God. Mm. I could go deep with this, y'all. I honestly feel like I could talk about healing your relationship with money from so many vantage points because God had me like go into a very low, like I started in such a low pit with money and have been able to ascend and like through my work, through the work of people connected to me, through like a whole effort, a community effort. But he's put all his resources in like, here, girl, you supposed to be rich, here. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do the work, and continue to grow and manifest that. But my third wounded area was my gender wound. And when I say my gender wound, I mean my being a woman, right? Outside of religion, outside of race, as women, no matter what color you are, women have historically been isolated from the conversations of wealth. We weren't allowed to have jobs for a long time. Our only abilities were to work, with our families in the home, raise our children, cook, clean, and our husbands did all of the work around money, right? And so that's a beautiful thing in terms of knowing that as a woman, you're supposed to be provided for by the man who has made himself your husband, who has revealed himself to be your husband. Or even when you are dating, and you guys know I teach rotational dating, go back and look at some of those videos. But even as you are embracing other suitors in your life, because you're dating, that they ought to come to the table as provider men, right? So from a historical standpoint, that's a good thing. But at the same time, there were men who abused that, right? There were men who would beat on women. There were men who would hold them the money against women in certain ways and say, you can't spend this, you can't spend that. There were men who would take the money and go out and build other families, and women would have a ton of heartbreak. Sometimes they wouldn't know it until the funeral that the man had three families all over the town, right? And so there's so much heartbreak, and there was so much pain that I believe like God heard from the feminine year after year after year in eternity. And he was like, whoa, we gotta course correct this. And our generation, this is brand new that we as women get a chance to turn on a video screen. And I'm inviting you guys into a healing container around money or whatever you sell on the internet, right? You know, people will text me or call and say, hey, Lindasha, can I get the link to your calendar? And book a call, and I'm able to like invite wealth into my life directly. Like I don't need a man, I don't need a job. Like God has removed all of those barriers from us to be able to receive wealth. And we're the first generation of women to do that. How special, first of all, how special it is to be alive and to be a woman and to be able to do that. On that level, it is creating some really weird power dynamics in our relationships with men because rightfully so, men are figuring out their place in the family, and you know, it brings up other conversations about respect and all of this stuff that we see happening in the relationship world. It doesn't escape my house either. These are still things you have to navigate because it's so new. But the wound, the gender wound for me was a big one, right? How do, you know, there were many times where I would say my price to people and I'd stop. And sometimes I wouldn't know if it was because I was black or because I was a woman. And they were like, you know, you charging how much? I don't get that as much anymore. If people can't afford it or the offer that I have isn't aligned with them, they just kind of move on. But for one season, when I was like growing my strength, my inner strength to communicate about money and how much I charge for something and all that stuff, and we'll talk about that in Manifest with Money. It's a big issue for a lot of women to know how to communicate about prices and how to set prices. We didn't know, right? Because we were not invited into the wealth conversation with men for generations. So, overcoming all of those gender wounds became a part of my conversation with God too. And I was like, God, you know, when it comes to this, to getting money and making money, like I got a lot going on. There's a lot of baggage in my money closet, right? And coming being a woman who like I prided myself on like doing my emotional work and being a very high vibrational woman. I don't know if you can identify with me on that. If you can, be like, oh, I'm a great woman. But then when I got in my money closet, I was like, oh my God, there are so many skeletons in this closet. You are literally the bag lady. And you know, I listen to Erica Badu. That's actually one of my favorite songs by Erica Badu is Bag Lady. When I feel weighed down, I play that song and I'm like, I'm not about to be the bag lady. But I ran from it so much that I guess I ran into it in money. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize all of this weight and baggage was on my back until I started to desire an easier relationship with money. And God was like, I got it for you, right? One of the verses that kind of always sticks with me while I am navigating the money journey. And every, you know, every so often I have to return back to this verse, but it was the verse in terms of God being our shepherd and how he leads us by still waters. And I was like, God, I want you to lead me by still money waters. I'm tired of the turbulent waters. I'm tired of the overworking. Like I'm a man. I'm not a man. I'm a woman. I don't have the testosterone. Most men overwork, in my opinion. If you want me to think about them, they have testosterone and they overwork in America. But I don't even have that. So I long for, you know, there was this longing inside of my soul for money that came through the use of my gifts, and it came with much more ease and much more just gentleness, right? That it was like, oh, Lindasha can, I am the wealth, right? I've done the work. So the wealth is inside of me. And it was about inviting others into that experience and into that space with me. And so I had a major gender wound around money. And so, what I would say about manifesting with God the easy way, now that we talked about these wounds, your homework for this for tonight or for whenever you get you a chance, I'll be back on next week in order to talk about this subject more. This will be our current YouTube series. And so your homework will be one to identify your gender wounds, right? So if you plan on joining us in the course, it's very important that these lessons are almost like the pre-work to the actual work that we do in the course. And in the course is when I coach you deeper on your individual things, right? Like what are the different things you can do in order to heal your unique issue. So if you grew up and was like, hey, my family got a divorce over money, we'll coach through that, right? So, but before we can coach through that, you got to kind of come to the table knowing what your story is and knowing what you were coded for. Because what I learned as I'm recoding myself for wealth, or as I've been recoding myself for wealth and riches, that I was already coded for poverty. And to switch that meant I had to get very intimate with my story and my unique hangups around money and begin to put new markers into my mentality and into my spirit around money, right? And so those were the three that came up for me. Your homework is to find out what are your money wounds, right? What are your money wounds? And you'll know your money wounds by the things that you'll ask yourself, like, what stood out to me over the years around money, right? Was there ever a guy? I have one past client, she had a guy that she dated and she was going through a really hard time. They were not married and they had already went all the way plus some. He was a boyfriend. Y'all know how I feel about that. Leave that out your vocabulary by the time you're 25. You should not be a woman talking about you got a boyfriend after 25. You have a fiance, you have suitors, you have a husband. Okay. So that's my opinion. Don't shoot the messenger. But she was dating the guy, she was his girlfriend, and she ran into a tough financial time. And when she went to ask him for money, right, which is should be an easy thing if you are giving your body to a man, most men, back in the day just knew that that came with a paycheck, right? This current generation of men is different, it hit different. But she went and she asked him, and he literally was like, I can't help you. And she was devastated, right? So that was one of her money wounds that we had to work through. Because at the end of the day, it's like, I've been giving you my body, my time, my energy. I've never asked you for anything. I'm going through a hard time. And that man pocketbook was not on the table, right? So, you got to know when you get out here in these streets, what's going on and what your expectations were. And she never thought she'd get to the point where she had to ask the guy that she was dating for money because she grew up super independent, which is a wound around money as well. But when the push came to shove, he wasn't available for that. And that was a big money wound she had to work through. So, what are your money wounds? And we'll talk about relational wounds and different things like that. But now, after you identify your wounds, right, for the purposes of what's going to stay public, the very next thing that we go through and the very next thing in the process is now you have to begin to invite money in your life with a sense of ease, right? If you're coming from your feminine essence place, you have to begin to recreate pleasure around your relationship with money, that you want pleasure and positive feelings associated with money as opposed to all of these negative things that come in your money baggage closet, right? And my money baggage closet came with all this stuff. I'm now in a space where when I think about money, I get some hiccups now. Like you guys know, I'm transitioning. I'll have some old wounds that pop up now, but because I've done a lot of the exercises that we will deal with over the year, like year after year and time after time with my money, I can course correct pretty fast. So what would have taken me, months, like 6, 7, 8 months to course correct in my money world just 5 years ago, I can do that maybe within a night, right? I can throughout in a one day, less than one day process, course correct my mindset and get back on track for, the version of wealth, the wealthy version of Lindasha that I'm manifesting at that time. For if you've never done any of this work, or if you've only done a little bit of this work, it may take you longer. So when we are inviting ease and pleasure and flow into into our money life, the very next thing that you want to do is, you want to, if you talk about the wound, you want to talk about, you want to balance it on the other side and eventually tip it to the other side with the reward, right? So if a wound made you down low, something shot you, think about somebody shot you, they wounded you, they brought you low, they made you smaller. The reward expands you. It makes you larger. It makes you more confident, more empowered, which is what's going to have to happen if you're going to actively manifest these things in your life. So, we're going to talk about our money rewards as the next thing. And as you're doing this work, I want you to counter it with, what are your money rewards? And your money rewards for this next season would be, what what would it look like if money was a source of pleasure in your life as opposed to pain or whatever else that you feel, right? What would you be doing with the money, right? This is where we have the freedom to enter into the space of our desires. Now, if your money wounds were like me, I had 5 wounded areas. We're not going through all of them today. I gave you 3 of them today, but I had 5 main areas that wounded my money life. If you're starting this work, it may be too hard for you to jump to the reward desire space. So if you sense that, I want you to then just get to a neutral space. If you haven't done any money healing work, I want you to reset yourself to the center space, to your, just get to neutral about money. You will say things like, I'm okay. Things always work out for me. I always figure it out. If you can't, like, jump over here, don't try, because you're gonna mess up your nervous system, and then you're just gonna self-sabotage and be back where you at. I did that countless times on my money journey. That's how I know. So some of you have to reground yourself just in just a solid, thank you that I have enough food today. Thank you that I have enough gas today. Thank you. If that's where you are, that's where you are, and it's okay to be there in your journey. But for those of you who are more advanced and you are excited about getting money in the easy way, it's like you actually do light up like me. I used to light up when I thought about all the things that I was going to do with the money that God allowed to come into my life. I'm lighting up now. Like, I wish y'all could see my dream home outline on my phone, right? It's an amazing, amazing home. And so it's been created in my mind. I've intentionally orchestrated this home and the layout a certain way. My architect, he was the one that literally said to me, like, Lindasha, he was like, your home has um features from France. It had features from Dubai and all this other stuff, Italy. And he was like, did you recognize you were like putting all of these different architectural designs into the home? And I said, no. I said, I didn't. I said, but it makes sense because I've traveled the world. So the funny part about when you open yourself up, as we finish, and I just like to leave you guys on a bright note and a good note to let you know what you have to look forward to if you continue in this work and if you continue with us and manifest money with God. One of the things that experience taught me, that I would have never been here had I not started my inner work journey around money, is when he said that, he said, did you realize you incorporated a lot of your global travel into this home? And I said, no, I didn't realize it. But I thought back to, like, all of the tours that I took when I traveled the world, all of the places that I've seen, all of the properties that I've stayed in, all of the luxury that I've experienced throughout the world. For some of you guys, you may know that Paris is the city, they set the standard for luxury. Paris does. And so I love Paris. I've been there 6 times. We're about to be there. Our 7th time is going to be in February when we do my first intensive since having the baby. But when he said all of that, it made me think, like, I was subconsciously picking up. I wasn't even thinking about building my dream home when I was doing all of the bulk of my world travel initially. But subconsciously, I picked up the architecture. And when it was time to design my home, all of those themes came in. And I almost stopped and I almost started worshiping God right then because I was like, wow, that is amazing. And I didn't even realize it. It was my architect who pointed out that my global travel had influenced, the home that I'm building. And I can't wait to share with you guys. It is such a process to build a custom dream mansion. Okay. So it'll be what, a minimum of 18 to 24 months. And that's when we find the land. And so hopefully, we putting in an offer within the next few days on another lot. But my architect done vetoed like 6 lots because he like, you can't build what you want on these on there's a lot that goes into it, from the trees to the water, all kind of stuff with the flow. But God is going to bring this dream home. You guys are going to get to experience it with me on Instagram and all over. But I say this because this is when you are able to connect in the reward, it makes doing the work worth it. If you never own what your desires are, you'll just falter with the work and you'll stay the same. So I just wanted to put that out there, how it all gets to work together on your journey. Your next manifestation may not be a dream home or whatever. My manifestation was global travel before the dream home, and then the global travel made it to the dream home, because that's just how God works. It keeps getting better and better, and you keep getting like connected, more and more connected in ways that you don't even know yet, right? I don't even know yet what my current desires will manifest for the future, and also what it will bring in terms of wealth into your lives or whatever else. So my hope is that you received what you came here for on today. If you join us in Manifest with God, my prayer is I'm greeting that whatever you're coming for, if it's a specific number that you want to earn, or if it's just that you want to reground yourself in wealth and heal your money wounds, whatever your intention is, um, I I align with that intention, and we're gonna get a year together, and we're going to, see that thing to the other side. So I'm excited to just invite you guys there. The links will be on the upload. I think I may put it in the chat too. Let me see. There's the link to my online school with Manifest with God. You still get 21% off all of my courses, including Manifest with God, until the end of the month, right? That's my birthday special. Some of you guys may have seen it on social media if you follow me, but you get 21% off of my courses, including Manifest with God. And I think the year container right now is set at a certain price, but you still get 21% off that. If there are any issues, you guys email me at lindasha@gmail.com. Me, myself, or someone from my team will literally respond to you. If there are any other issues, I know a lot of y'all DM me, and you follow me on Facebook, you follow me on Instagram. So feel free to DM me as well, and we'll voice memo back and forth if there are any issues there. You guys do not mind reaching out and let me know. So I'm so excited about this offer. I'm so excited about Paris. And yeah, I'm wishing you guys all of the success and ease around money, and for you and for me and for everybody and every woman involved who desires it. So, all right, until next time, bye, y'all.